Now for a monocot family, this is Malvaceae, named for this genus over here, Malva. This is a group that used to contain or contains some other families, so it's gotten a little bit bigger in recent years with the advent of phylogenetic evidence. So it's rather diverse, and I'm going to highlight the parts that are maybe easier for identifying these plants. As you can see, they've got a variety of habits, trees, shrubs, and herbs, and alternate leaves, pretty common standard stuff. The palmate venation is helpful for this group. So palmate venation, often lobed, so some shallow lobes here, some very deep lobes leaning into, I think I dare call that compound, maybe, bordering on compound. And then we'll get to the flowers in a little bit, they're very distinctive. Some interesting features of this family. We've got often these star-like hairs on the surface. So these are, some of these plants have a velvety kind of texture. Also a nice defense against herbivores. And some of them are awful slimy. So if you're fond of okra, okra is a fruit. It's a capsule that in the cultivated version isn't dehiscent. So it's just like a green capsule that people can use fresh or pickled. And if you're familiar with okra, it's awful slimy. This slimy is mucilage. It's basically a carbohydrate secretion of these plants, and makes it a little bit more challenging to chew on. Probably one of the more distinctive features of this family is the arrangement of the stamens around the style. So we have the female part of the flower here, ovary style, and then a little hard to see, there'd be stigmas in there. And the stamens are fused to each other in a surrounding column, but they're not fused to the style. So they make this kind of collar around it. And then the stamens emerge near where the style, where the stigmas branch out. So one that's been cut open here, and then this is one of these hibiscus flowers, kind of a characteristic flower of, say, Hawaii, the tropics. And you can see there's just a single unadorned structure here. This is the style inside, and then the fused bases of the stamens all together. And then all those reproductive parts all coming out in the same place. So stamens, the more grainy, broken up looking parts, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stigma lobes there, puts these different male and female functions right next to each other in the flower. So if you see that, that's a very good indicator that you've got Malvaceae. Another feature that's sometimes present but not always is called an epicalyx. So it's a calyx. Calyx proper is inside here. We'll have the same number of sepals as we have petals. And then outside of that is sometimes this epicalyx. So it's bracts, and it kind of looks like you've got a double calyx. A few varieties of species you can find locally. We've got herbaceous plants. This one's a weed, the so-called velvet leaf abutilon. Malva, also a weedy group. This plant, Nepea, is a marsh plant, is dioecious, kind of an interesting departure from the typical Malvaceae plant, known as glade mallow. We have a woody member of this family. In your older literature, it's going to be in its own family called Tiliaceae. This is a genus called Tilia, known as linden or basswood. And you can see the flowers don't quite match what we've been describing about Malvaceae, so kind of makes sense that this was not classified in with the other Malvaceae, but there's been a lot of lumping of species within that bigger family now. The lindens have a nice characteristic inflorescence, has this big bract, so big leafy bract. It's a different color from the other leaves, different form. And then it's attached to this cluster of flowers, which becomes a cluster of fruits, and the bract helps them to kind of parachute down. And then the the leaves, back to what we were looking at before with this palmate venation. So a few features that kind of bring us back to Malvaceae typical. Lots of economically important plants, some cultivated plants. We mentioned okra. Marsh mallow is kind of interesting. So this family goes by the common name of the mallow family, Malva mallow. And there's a plant that grows in wet areas called the marshmallow. What? Marshmallow gives the name to the food that people eat. And basically the marshmallow that you eat as food traces its origins. Basically you take the mucilage out of the roots of these plants and spin it up, churn it up along with a bunch of sugar, which always helps. It's basically sugar with sticky stuff. It becomes marshmallow. Today's marshmallows, I don't know that they use any of this actual marshmallow plant. They're basically just a sugar, not necessarily taken straight from a plant. So a very refined sugar version of our modern marshmallows. Other ones, some with more tropical leanings, durian you might have heard of. This is a plant that's very stinky fruits. Chocolate is in the genus Theobroma. This is a South American plant. Hibiscus ornamentals, the cotton plant is in the mallow family. This is basically a capsule that broke open and has seeds inside, and the seeds have a lot of the cottony hairs with them. There's our okra. Here's a cacao pod. So inside of there, the seeds are what we get chocolate from. And here's durian. So tasty, but stinky. So it's a very sulfurous kind of smell. Unpleasant, and yet the fruit is sweet. So it's sort of a custardy, stinky fruit. And you see the relationship between the durian and chocolate. The chocolate is the beans or the seeds are surrounded by this gooey stuff. And the gooey stuff is what animals are typically interested in. And then humans have decided that they also prefer these seeds inside of the cacao pods. Seeds you can crush up. They're very bitter, but with some sugar, they help out turn into a nice little culinary delight. Back to monocots here. This is a family that's got one of these alternative names, the palm family. So palm trees are in the family known as Araceae. And I like to pronounce it a little bit weird because there are two families that some people pronounce the same, and I always feel like it's not always so clear. So there's a plant family called Ericaceae, named for the genus Erica, and there's a family called Araceae, named for Areca. And a lot of people, when I hear it, it sounds like they're saying the same thing, Ericaceae and Ericaceae. Well, that's no fun for me, so I'm going to exaggerate the difference and call it Araceae, the palm family. This is a group of tropical plants. These are monocots. If you want to split hairs, they're not technically woody. They're more fibrous than woody. So it allows us to say that the monocots still don't have trees. They're not technically woody, but they sure have the same growth form. So places that don't experience freezing, this is where they can thrive. And within the palm family, you have palmately compound leaves. So compound leaves are common in this family. This is an example of palmately compound. And then you also have pinnately compound, also probably more common, pinnately compound leaves. And they have a strange development where they start with these leaflets more connected and they actually break apart. So sometimes within one of these leaves, you'll see some fibers just kind of dangling throughout. That's a remnant of what's been torn apart really to produce these. So kind of an interesting way to make a compound leaf. You can almost see one here sort of tearing in between the leaflets. Inflorescences, lots of tiny flowers and often very complex panicles of flowers. Males and females, sometimes in different locations. And the fruit type is a drupe. Here's some economically important drupes from the Araceae family. Coconuts are a drupe. I think we talked about these in the fruit section. The fruit as it's made by the plant is this big husky thing with the coconut seed inside. Because it's a drupe, then the hard part on the outside of the coconut that you buy from the store is actually endosperm. And then you crack that open and there's a little seed coat, and then inside the stuff you eat from a coconut is its, oh shoot, I said that wrong, sorry. The outside of the coconut is endocarp, inside of the fruit, and the stuff we eat inside of the coconut, the white flesh, is endosperm, inside of the seed. Other economically important members of the palm family are dates, genus Phoenix, And of that, we eat the flesh of the outside. And then this one had a little flash in the pan for a while there, the acai berries, genus Euterpe. I don't know if they're as popular as they used to be, but they were a hot item for a little while there. A few other ones here. Rattan is a member of the palm family. Palmetto, one you can find a few varieties of this in southeastern United States. And then another claim to fame, one of these big families, this is Corypha. This is the world's largest inflorescence. So I put a person on there for scale. This is about the size of this plant, just a massive plant. And more than that even, it flowers once and then dies. So an amazing inflorescence made for a single use. And then life goes on after that. Some other ones here, some rather large inflorescences and seeds. This is one of the bigger seeds of the world, called Coco de Mer, Lodoicea. Really large seed there, really large male portion of the inflorescence.